What's up, guys? Welcome to Writers at Work Compo Clinic. My name is Teacher Kristen, and I am going to take you through the sticky question of how do I use dialogue well? Now, let me share with you a few thoughts teachers may have when it comes to dialogue within compositions. I've heard from students that some teachers flat out tell them, do not use dialogue at all. So they completely ban the use of dialogue within compositions. And I can understand why teachers may say this. Students end up making three different kinds of mistakes when it comes to dialogue. The first mistake being a ton of punctuation errors. Yeah, I get it. Dialogue punctuation can seem a bit confusing. So sometimes in an effort to avoid those errors completely, teachers just tell you, no, don't do it. The second mistake would be inane dialogue, a dialogue that's pretty boring and not really important to the plot, like, "Good morning, Mrs. Tan," the class chorused. "Good morning, students," Mrs. Tan replied. Now, unless Mrs. Tan is turning into an alien while she says that kind of dialogue is really boring. It doesn't really help the story. And the third error that students try and kind of making is that I've seen instances where dialogue basically takes up an entire composition foolscap paper, like the whole one side of it. And this is mainly because the student was trying to move the plot forward using dialogue between two characters. Now, this comes to two different difficulties. Now, the first difficulty being, what? You can't do this. This is not the format for a composition. Compositions are short stories. Whatever dialogue you select has to be written in a short form, as in like character says, character reply. Like that's it. You can't go into a long spiel between two different characters. The second problem is that you can't really flex your vocabulary. When you write with dialogue, you wind up writing the way people speak, and people tend to speak using really simple words because, we're talking. We don't really go out with our full vocabulary when we're chatting with a friend in the canteen. So this causes the characters to start using really simple words and deprives you, the writer, of the opportunity to show your vocabulary skills. So with this in mind, teachers just kind of like, no, just don't use dialogue, do other things. But that doesn't mean dialogue cannot be super effective for your composition. So let's take a look. If you're asking yourself how to use dialogue well, you need to consider the following. You need to make sure your dialogue is both correct and impactful. Correct in terms of punctuation checks and impactful in terms of, well, you've selected them carefully with an emotion for your character that winds up moving the plot forward. So all of these three things I'm going to go through one by one, but first let's take a look at punctuation checks. Dialogue punctuation actually follows some pretty basic punctuation rules. It's the kind of stuff that you learn when you're in primary one, like you start the sentence with the capital letter and you end it with the full stop. That's basically what dialogue also is. The only difference being that you now have to capitalize the start of the quote. Now, what are the quotes? Okay, let me go through them in these three examples. So let's take a look at dialogue punctuation example number 1. Now, let's say in my story, I would like to write the following sentence. Glaring at Gary in exasperation, Rachel barked, "You are such a pain in my neck." Okay, cool. So here I've got the whole sentence. It starts with the word glaring and ends with the word neck. However, within the sentence, you'll notice that I've got a couple of extra features that make the sentence specifically dialogue, namely the parts marked in green and yellow. So the stuff in yellow is called the quote, being the exact words that come out of your character's mouth. "You are such a pain in my neck." That's exactly what Rachel says out of her face. Then you have the other part, the he said, she said part. In this case, Rachel barked. This is called the speech stem. It tells you the manner, barked, in which the person said it, and Rachel, the person who actually spoke it. So the speech stem is kind of important. That doesn't mean every single dialogue is going to have a speech stem. In novels, you will find that sometimes they have just basic paragraphs with 2-finger spacing, and then it's nothing but dialogue with no speech stem whatsoever. This is because it is already implied who the person speaking is, because it's a novel, it's long form. So the author has said it earlier in the page. There's no need to he said, she said all the way down. But in this case, we've got this sentence. Now, let's take a look at the punctuation within this sentence. First, do take note. The speech stem here is in front of the quote. which means the punctuation is going to follow certain basic rules, namely, okay, start of sentence, glaring, capital letter, cool, capitalization for the start of a quote. You are such a pain in my neck is the quote, so capital Y. All right, 2 capitalizations already done. Then I've got to do the basic thing of what the teacher usually says, end your sentence with a full stop. And I have ended my sentence with the full stop. The only thing I've done is to make note of the position of the full stop. It always has to be inside the inverted commas. So open inverted commas, close inverted commas, the punctuation for the quote is always on the inside, okay? There are certain situations where your full stop will be on the outside, and I'll come to that in a minute. So as you can see from dialogue punctuation example number 1, start with a capital letter, end with a full stop. The only tricky business is where the full stop is, inside, close inverted commas, and the capitalization at the start of the quote, the capital Y that you see there, right next to the open inverted commas. Now, you'll notice the Rachel barked part comes with a comma. This is where I know certain students get confused. Okay, I know I need a comma for the speech stem somewhere, but I don't know where. So if you have a speech stem that is in front of your quote, the comma usually follows the speech stem. But it doesn't matter where it is because you just have to remember, full stop at the end. Rachel barked. Is that the end of your sentence? No, don't put a full stop. That's it. Let's take a look at dialogue punctuation example number 2. So it's the same sentence, but I've kind of shifted things around. This is the more the sentence structure that students tend to favor for some reason. I guess it's because it's the way that they practice earlier on in primary 1 and stuff like that. So it goes, you are such a pain in my neck, barked Rachel, glaring at Gary in exasperation. Okay, so within my whole sentence, you're going to see that I have the same parts. I've got the quote and I've got the speech stem. However, you're going to notice that the positions have shifted. Now the quote is in front and the speech stem is behind. However, the punctuation rules still apply. Capital letter at start of sentence, you, capital Y. But it's also the start of my quote. Cool. Double duty for the capital letter. So I don't really need to worry about, capitalize the start of quote. Really capital, I don't need to capital anymore. So done. That's the first one that's settled. Followed by this part here. Okay, you are such a pain in my neck. This is the end of Rachel's words. But it is not the end of your sentence, the one that you are writing on the page. If it's not the end of your sentence, don't put full stop. Here you use a comma. But again, it's on the inside. Finally, glaring at Gary in exasperation. End of sentence. Full stop law. It's just that. You start with capital, you end with full stop. Is it the end of your sentence when you write, you are such a pain in my neck, barked Rachel, glaring at Gary in exasperation? Is the word neck the last word in your sentence, the end of your sentence, not Rachel's? No. Use comma. Let's try another one. Okay, so we've had an example with the speech stem in front of the quote. We've got an example with the speech stem behind the quote. Now, there is another form of sentence where the speech stem is kind of in the middle of the quote, almost like cutting cue, anyhow, just jump in the center. This is dialogue punctuation example number 3. Now, I've changed the words around just so that, it kind of makes a bit more sense. If you just be quiet, Rachel barked, you will know how to solve this problem sum. Okay, this is one of the trickier punctuations that you may want to check a bit more carefully. However, let's just take a look at the pieces. Now, once again, I've got my entire sentence. If you just be quiet, if the start of the sentence that you are writing, and sum the end of the sentence that you are writing. However, in between the quotes, you will see marked in yellow. You also notice there is almost like the burger in the hamburger, the speech stem, right in between. Now, here, the rules still apply. If is the first word of your sentence. So, capital letter. Okay, done. Just capital letter. Then, capitalize start of quote. Capitalize start of quote, because that part there is Rachel's quote. She's still talking. So her sentence comes in two parts. If you just be quiet, you will know how to solve this problem, son. If you just be quiet, capital letter already, you will know. Next part of the quote, she's still talking, capital letter. Okay? Followed by the full stops and the commas. So here you've got your two capital letters settled already. Start of sentence, if, start of quote, you. The commas here become a little bit tricky. If you just be quiet, comma. Now you notice that this is the end of the quote, the first half of her quote, not the end of your sentence. So you put the comma inside. However, what makes this sentence structure a little more unique than the others is that the speech stem continues after with more quotation. So here, the end of my sentence is the word some. So I'm going to put the full stop there. But where Rachel barked, comma, your sentence still continues. So for this one here, if you want to use this sentence structure with the speech stem in the middle, just note, as long as it's not the end of your sentence, quiet's not the end, bark's not the end, you put comma. If it's the end of your sentence, problem some, you put full stop. Basic. Start sentence, capital letter, capitalize your quote, end with full stop. Everything else is a comma. Okay? Now, with this in mind, so after you go through your writing of your sentences and you you check your punctuation and stuff like that, you then need to ask yourself the following. Okay, how's my paragraphing? Comma, inverted comma, full stop, capital letter, everything okay already? Paragraphing. All right, now this is a pain point for me. Take this example. I peered out of my window, searching for the source of the suspicious sound. Gary, what are you doing? Father asked me. I heard a suspicious sound, I replied. Okay, some of you listening to this might already be like, huh? Okay, this is not a good example of what dialogue should be, but I'll come to that later. Take a look at the paragraphing for this example. Now, you'll notice this dialogue part has two different sentences, father's sentence and my sentence, the I replied part. Gary, what are you doing? Father asked me. Now, in the same paragraph, I have another person speaking. I heard a suspicious sound, I replied. So, first problem, two people speaking in one paragraph. This is wrong. No, don't do this. Every paragraph has one person speaking, just one, which means this one has to be rewritten as such. I peered out of the window, searching for the source of the suspicious sound. Gary, what are you doing? Father asked me. Okay, that whole paragraph is his. I heard a suspicious sound, I replied. I get my own speaking paragraph. In a situation like this, I've kind of heard students asking me, Teacher Kristen, my paragraph can be so short. I heard a suspicious sound. I replied, 7 letters, can I? Can. There's no word limit for paragraphs. There are paragraphs where a person just says, yes, he said, 3 words. Can. It's no issue. Because dialogue paragraphs are not, you don't want to think of them as all paragraphs being the same. Not every paragraph needs to have like 20 words. It doesn't work that way. You use the paragraphs the way they fit into your story. So here, I replied is just my line. If father then proceeds to reply to me, he's going to get another new paragraph. Now, this one here is pretty straightforward. You can see the speech stem, the quote, speech stem, quote, speech stem. Sometimes I see this different version of this correct one where students try and switch over the different sentence structures. So they're like, oh, I got to make it sound different. Okay, cool. So they make it sound a little like this. I peered out of my window, searching for the source of the suspicious sound. Father asked me, Gary, what are you doing? I heard a suspicious sound, I replied. All right, to your ears, it kind of sounds better because the speech stem is shifted. So it's not quote, speech stem, quote, speech stem. It is now speech stem, quote, quote, speech stem. Okay, cool. However, and I don't understand why, it looks correct. Because to me, as like, I don't know if it's as a teacher, but as a kid, it looks so wrong. You've got 2 inverted commas like side by side. Close, open, open, like they're right there, they're right side by side. How can they be correct? That's not right. Oh, I don't know, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just a dork like that. But guys, this cannot be used. But it's a mistake that's so common. I literally asked my students, is this something that, I don't know, that is allowed when you're writing Chinese compos? Is this a Chinese punctuation? Because I know sometimes kids use the colon instead of open and close inverted commas when they're doing dialogue. No, it's wrong. Okay, so in this case, same rules apply. One person speaks per paragraph. So now, don't do this if you see the open and close inverted commas side by side. Come on, guys, that's obviously wrong. Give your character a new paragraph. That's basically it. Every paragraph has one speaker. That's all. Now, punctuation checked. Paragraph checked. Okay, paragraphing is part of punctuation, by the way. So yeah, that's done. Let's now talk about what you actually choose to make dialogue. So the last part of the dialogue series is going to be selective dialogue. I'm going to show emotion and plot details within this because the way that you choose your dialogue or select the dialogue has to include your consideration of how emotive it is. And, if you can throw in a bit of personality into the dialogue, that'll be great. And what plot details this dialogue provides. So let's take a look at this example. Since I, did it over there, just copy pasta, use it again. Now, with this example, as I mentioned earlier, some of you might be thinking, oh, it's so dull. Okay, it is dull. Don't use this kind of dialogue. The sentences are pretty short. The sentence structure is not that complex or interesting. And the words that are used, it's pretty simple. Now, if I'm going to be honest, this is like a, higher ability primary 1, or, a kid who's good at writing in primary 1, or even like the start of primary 2. This is the kind of stuff that they would write. And I would be like, oh, well done, primary 2 kid, give you a big mark. If you're P5, P6, don't you dare. Now, let's try and make this dialogue a little bit more interesting. Now, I've chosen this to be my dialogue. It might be because I am introducing the character of father who's coming into the story. This would be a good reason for you to use dialogue to bring someone into the story. So I'm going to put it in this form. However, there's going to be a little bit more that I can throw into the dialogue, man. If I'm going to give you a hamburger, I'm not just going to take 2 slices of bread and stick a meat bun in between and eat. It's got to be better than that. You got to put the cheese, tomato, blah, blah, blah. What goes into burgers? Suddenly I want McDonald's. Anyway, so here, I'm going to show some emotion in father's dialogue. So if father's going to come in and catch sight of you and be like, huh, what are you doing? Let's throw that into his dialogue, throw that, that puzzlement into his dialogue with some words. So I peered out of my window, searching for the source of the suspicious sound. Father caught sight of me. Okay, so caught sight of. I'm already adding some actions into the dialogue and called out, Gary, what on earth are you doing? Okay, what on earth are you doing? Okay, he's calling out to you, but the words, what on earth are you doing, shows me that he is puzzled. Like, huh? Nani? Do people still say nani? Is that a thing? Anyway, then to show my response. Now, I'm already suspicious about it because I said it's a suspicious sound. I can show my character's reaction to the sound, my emotion because of the sound. I think I heard something weird out there. So I've made it a bit more descriptive. Weird. I hissed nervously. So instead of, I think I heard something weird out there, I replied. It's going to be like, I think I heard something weird out there, I hissed nervously. Now I'm using an adverb here, nervously. This is one of the simplest ways to show emotion. He was embarrassedly, nervously, worriedly, happily. All these kind of things are very simple. So, use them with care. Don't fall into a habit of everything is an adverb, okay? So in this example, I've used words to show emotion. Now I'm going to throw a little bit more into it. So say, for example, I'm going to move on. Let's take a look at the speech stem part now. Father caught sight of me and called out. So here, as I said, I've added in the action of caught sight of me. This tells me that whatever's happening might be pretty surprising to father. And it shows in this case that father is a little reactive, like, "Oi, what on earth are you doing?" So he's that kind of a dad. Then you have the I hiss nervously, trying to keep my voice low. This trying to keep my voice low part not only shows that I'm nervous about the situation and I think it's suspicious, but it also shows that I am aware of things. I'm trying to not be detected, and I'm trying to keep my voice down. This also brings in certain plot details. Firstly, that father's there. Secondly, that I don't want to be seen, that something weird is going on out there, and I want to keep it as quiet as possible. Now, with this trying to keep my voice low and father caught sight of me and called out, I have basically changed the dialogue from this one on the left, where it says, I peered out my window, searching for the source of the suspicious sound. Father asked me, Gary, what are you doing? I heard a suspicious sound, I replied, to, I peered out of my window, searching for the source of the suspicious sound. Father caught sight of me and called out, Gary, what on earth are you doing? I think I heard something weird out there, I hissed nervously, trying to keep my voice low. The second example has emotions, it has personality, it has actions in it. It kind of avoids a certain repeated word of suspicious sound, and it is important to my plot. This is an example of good dialogue. Now, how exactly is this going to play into your composition? He said, she said, relays, kind of like, badminton match where you hit the shuttlecock back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. These can get super dull. So you want to make sure that your dialogue includes a bunch of variety. Now, variety in this case can come in the form of reported speech. So maybe you do need people going back and forth talking to each other. But you don't have to he said, she said all the time. You can use reported speech. You can change a few of them into thoughts. So that earlier example I was talking about with a suspicious sound can actually be changed to this. So if let's say I want to keep the dialogue, I've in this example, I've replaced all the dialogue, but I'm not saying that you have to do that for yours. I'm just showing you how it can be changed from reported speech and thoughts from the dialogue, okay? So I peered out of my window, searching for the source of the suspicious sound. Father caught sight of me and called out. Now, instead of saying, Gary, what on earth are you doing? I've changed that dialogue, that quote, into kind of reported speech, asking me what on earth I was doing. I wondered. Now here I'm turning, I think I heard something weird out there, into actual thoughts, like within my character's head. I'm articulating my character's thoughts. I wondered if what I heard was not just my imagination. I think I heard something weird out there, but I'm not sure. Trying to keep my voice low, I hissed nervously as I, reported speech, told father about the strange noise. And thus you have some variety. These two sentence structures kind of mixed in a little bit with your dialogue quotes back and forth from the correct punctuation along with correct paragraphing should add a huge amount of spice to your story. Dialogue is, unfortunately, a double-edged sword. Sometimes, if you use it well, it can be amazing. It can really beef up your story and really show a large amount of information within a small amount of time. So much emotion, so much plot, so much personality within the dialogue sentences. But if you use it poorly, it's going to be kind of dull. And then your teacher is going to be like, you know what? Just don't. And you don't want that. You want to flex in as many ways as possible. Okay. So I hope I've answered your question of how do I use dialogue well. Feel free to go and revisit some of the slides if you need some visual references for how your dialogue punctuation should wind up being. And I will see you next time for Writers at Work Compo Clinic. Bye.